Hi, and welcome to And So Much More. My name's Cami Smith, and I am here with an amazing group of women who serve in our local public schools here in Lynchburg. And we want to have a conversation today about our adolescent mental health situation that we have, not just here in Lynchburg, because some of you have served in other divisions, correct?
Yeah.
We just want to shine a light on what our kids are really experiencing. And a lot of times, you know, things come out at school that don't come out at home. And just to have a glimpse of where this mental health dial is falling and maybe what we can do about it to help these kids to be successful long term. And so I've got Nakia Brown, Shannon Fisher, and Whitney Boyd from Lynchburg City Schools, and specifically Dunbar Middle School. But Whitney, you say that you're kind of division wide.
Yeah.
Okay, so you probably get a glimpse of the differences between the various schools. Is it just middle school, or is it?
Nope, I serve pre-K all the way through our high schools.
Ooh-wee, okay. That sounds like a lot. But we'll start with you and work our way down. Tell us a little bit about your role and what is it that you do in the local schools?
So I'll try to keep it's a lot of things, but my official title is Coordinator of Family and Community Engagement. So community engagement and family engagement are kind of their own islands unto themselves. Community engagement is more so just partnering with the local businesses, churches, community groups to either come in and offer support to the schools, resources for the schools, speakers, people, things like that. Family engagement is more of the, how do you engage your families? What kind of supports can we provide for our families at the various levels? And then there's a lot of like event planning, coordination in between the two roles as well.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
And what about you?
I'm Director of School Counseling at Dunbar Middle School. And so Ms. Fisher and I are there as the counselors in the department.
Okay.
And we really work together just similarly with breaking down how we manage all the students and things like that. But we've tried to, since we both were able to start at the same time, it actually worked out, I think, really, really well. And we've tried to build a program. It's been a little bit slow just in terms of understanding the differences and the nuances with being here in Lynchburg City, understanding the need of our students and what the implementation of a program looks like in a middle school here.
Yeah. What division did you come from?
I was coming from Campbell, and I was working in a combined school setting. So although I was middle school counselor there, I was able to see students from grade 6 through 12.
Oh, wow.
All the way through.
All right. Awesome. And Ms. Fisher?
I'm Shannon Fisher, so I'm a school counselor at Dunbar as well, as Ms. Brown said. We do try and ensure continuity of care for our students by using caseloads. So she serves students with last names A through K, and I serve students with caseloads L through Z.
Okay.
But because we've been able to function really well together as a team, being seasoned and having come from separate divisions, we do work with all students as needed, depending on what makes them most comfortable or depending on who's available at the time. We've really, I think, done a great job being collaborative and working really well together.
Okay.
But I came from Bedford County Schools, and during my time there, I served all three levels. I did a couple years at the elementary level. I did a year at Jefferson Forest, did a year at Liberty Middle, and 6 years at the alternative school. So I came with a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Not on purpose, but during the pandemic, it created some transients in my position. So it ended up a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. Well, and I bet that's helpful to have touch points with so many different age groups and seeing them come up too, because I know from my perspective, I have two kids, 11 and 13. I guess he's 14 now. I always forget, so close to birthdays. So I have two kids, and they spend so much time at school. They spend so much time, more than they do at home. Yes. And it's a lot. I want parents to be able to hear kind of your perspective of what you see happening in schools, and maybe even eventually like how parents can be a better support, how our local health system, how we can be a better support. And then also you think about like the law enforcement component. If it gets to that point, what does that level of support look like for you guys? So just to start really high level, tell us what is the role of school counselor? And anybody can jump in. But, I think when I was in school, my counselor was more of like an academic counselor. And it was like periodic check-ins on what are your goals? Where do you want to go? But now, I know both of my kids have relied, in some cases heavily, on the school counselor with just situations at home, situations with friends at school that got a little touchy. And it's been such a great resource. And so you all juggle a lot. So what is the role of a school counselor?
So the school counselors, we do have 3 domains that we typically try to explain as far as how we serve students, and that's academic, and then there's personal and social, emotional, and career. And again, sometimes what that looks like varies, again, certainly from level to level. So elementary, when you're talking about careers or you're talking about the academic, that's going to look different with their discussions with elementary students.
Yeah.
And it's like, introduction to careers and opportunities and things out there. Once you hit middle school where we are, we're still talking about those kinds of things and also trying to support students in not just introduction, but making decisions and how now your academics are also impacting the paths that you might choose as you move forward. And then that becomes even stronger once you hit high school, which I think a lot of people are more familiar with that previous model of school counseling where it was more guidance focused and related.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of times the high school focus is dictated, unfortunately, because of the nature of the academic component and coming into place with that. So similarly with the personal and social emotional, that's still going to look different from level to level. One of the things that I really enjoy the social emotional teaching component when we get opportunities to teach students, not just one-on-one when there's like a personal issue or conflict, but we can go into the classrooms and do a lesson, and we're talking about things like even still and kind of in the vein of what this conversation entails, what are we seeing? So, there may be in our minds like generational differences between what respect looks like between a student and a teacher. We had our ideas, but now students have a different idea, and so we still can go in and teach or talk about that. And again, specifically also, what are the cultural norms? Because it's maybe not the same. So we still do have to give definition to these things and what that looks like in differing environments. Okay. So the role of a school counselor is to support students in all in all 3 of those areas specifically, specifically.
That's no small task.
You mentioned that there was a time when we perceived a school counselor as strictly academic.
Yeah.
And I have those memories as well. I met with my counselor once a year and we checked off what I was taking, and she asked me where I was going to college, and that expectation is still present. So we've only had tasks added to us rather than taken away from us. Yeah. And I've heard other school counselors, I'm kind of stealing some language from some coworkers, they refer to us as the junk drawer of the school. So we have a lot of hidden work that may not be easy to explain or define, but it's an addition and not in lieu of what you remember a school counselor being like when we were kids.
Yeah. So not to put you on the spot, but what are some of like the out of the box things you have found yourself doing? Like thinking about that junk drawer, like what are some things where you're like, that's not how I saw my day going?
We've done everything from being down at the football field with a kid to giving them a new pair of pants because they've spilled something in their lap. And it ebbs and flows. It just depends on the day and the pulse of the building.
Well, and you think about those moments, even just specifically like spilling something on yourself, like if that age group with other kids, I mean, that's got to feel like immediate target on your back. You're immediately embarrassed. And that's more than just providing a pair of pants. You kind of got to walk that kid through like, this is okay. Like, it's fine. Like, no one's going to see. You have to like, I guess maybe address their fears. And so it's so much more than just giving them a pair of pants.
Image is important.
Yes.
I was literally with someone else's support. We were doing hair in my office yesterday. The student felt like they were having a bad hair day. And so then to deal with that. They were out of dress code because they had a head covering. And so then we have to deal with how can you continue to be here in the building, not be in trouble, but also feel like you're ready to.
Okay, I don't know why that's making me emotional. Just thinking about, probably because I think of my own kids and how, I love that there's that level of care put into what they're going through, because, we've all been there where
nobody
you're
wants
like,
to have a bad hair day.
No, and it seems so like trivial, but especially for kids that age, like it's not.
Well, and news travels faster than ever. So when we were kids, you could have a really embarrassing day,
Yes.
and
Everybody knows about
hours
it.
later, it was kind of done and moved on from. And now it takes 20 minutes and everyone knows.
Oh, I hate
and
that.
there's a lot of things happening to try and slow down the travel of news with the
Yeah.
off and away policies in terms of cell phones and things like that. But kids are so adjusted to instant gratification now, and how quickly we can get information and how quickly we can get our needs met. And it just makes it really hard to be a kid these days. So hard. When we went home after school, we went outside and we didn't have cell phones and we didn't talk to you until the next day. And that's just not their case.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up cell phones, because I know there is that off and away policy, and I'm sure that doesn't always happen. So how have you seen just the impact of devices in school? Whether it is even like, I know they get Chromebooks. So like having access to the internet on a Chromebook, like that's a lot to entrust really any adolescent age with. But then cell phones too. How are you seeing that impact?
So for me, I have virtual students. So a lot of times what parents will say is like, hey, can you block YouTube, or can you block this certain site? Because
I have requested that as a parent.
So on my end of the world, it's more of not so much of the cell phone, but more of like that Chromebook technology internet piece of if you're supposed to be doing an assignment or you get irritated with, and we've done it too. We had to close our laptop and take a break and walk away. Yeah. Well, like you said, they're adolescents. Like, I'm just going to get on here and watch this video that I want. And then the next thing you know, 3 hours are gone and you didn't go back to your assignment. And so parents are like, well, how do we keep them on track? And so the challenge for me, they're not in a building. Like, I don't see them every day. They're not with me at a facility. And so the communication between me and my parents has to be a lot stronger, because it's more of a just send me a text, pick up the phone call, or pick up the phone. And so a lot of times I'm blocking stuff that they can't access or shouldn't be able to access. And not because it's a bad website. It's just we have to be able to cut off all of the distractions. So when you're at home, you're literally sitting in a big distraction. You're in your house. You're in you're in a comfortable space. It's just you.
Imagine.
And so
being responsible for somebody who is not directly in front of you, that's got to feel a little overwhelming.
It's interesting. Very interesting.
What about you guys?
I think, I don't know, I'm trying to think of it. Again, obviously so different, because that is how they are getting their education, and they don't know like the paper pencil, like when we were in middle school and you had to write your first and last name and your like, group and the date, and you had to write, it had to be, top right corner.
I can like see it in my head. Yeah, it had to be at the top right.
And these students, so I think about like even when debit cards became more popular, and there were all the conversations about managing money differently, because it could almost in a way seem off and away. And sometimes I do still think, even though the students are used to it in a way that we were not, I still think there's still this little bit of a distance sometimes, it feels like, between them and their work and their education and what they need to access and how they need to be sometimes accountable for things like these. They can check their grades anytime. You can see them. They don't have to wait for a teacher's red grade book and go try to like sneak and look at a line and find, or like, hey, can I see my grade? And we got to cover up everything. You can literally go. But we find that that's something that we have to teach a lot. Like, this is something that you are accountable for. This is how you log in and see on this platform what your current grade is. When report cards come out, this should not be a surprise to you at all, if ever it was to anybody in time. So it's just an interesting thing of still teaching the skills, because this is, the Chromebooks, which I think that the division has tried to emphasize more this year, especially with our middle school students. This is an educational tool. And so I've explained it to a couple of students, just like if you had a textbook and you had to turn that textbook in at the end of every year, this is essentially
Yeah.
your textbook and how you manage that. I definitely love the off and away for students. Unfortunately, yes, no, it doesn't always happen as it should. But again, I think it just helps to have students to try to retrain themselves to focus and what is the importance of what we're here for, and to value the work.
Yeah. You know, it's such a weird, I think about the comparison of at home and devices. You know, this is a lot of times how they are socially interacting with their friends. They're playing games online, or for a while there, my son was like Zooming with his friends, like constantly. And so, you know, you want to limit screen time because you want them to get outside with their friends. But you have to factor in that this is a part of their social connection. And that's difficult for me as a parent. I can't imagine what that is like in the school setting when it's an integrated part of their learning plan. And yet you're also like, but push-pull.
It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I haven't worked in a high school in 4 or 5 years now, but I've actually heard that kids aren't in a hurry to get their driver's license like they used to be. Like that used to be such a huge deal for
I had like
us.
a countdown.
And for them, they have access to each other all the time, so they don't necessarily need to drive to their friends. And that's not the case for, you know, the entire population. But I do think there are kids that are like, I'm not in a huge hurry because I have the connections that I need through gaming. That's definitely a very big and present thing for children now. The technology is a blessing and a curse, because there are times where, with my own kid who's middle school aged, he has ADHD, and if he forgets to turn something in, we can take a picture of it and upload it in Google Classroom. So nice. And it's been turned in before the end of the day. So there's some advantages. And the reality is that technology is going to be a present part of their workplace, their home life, their friend circles. Yeah. So they're going to have to, at some point, learn how to navigate it and manage it. But a lot of times that evening time feels so quick, and we're always so hurried as families. Even our well-adjusted families we got 5 minutes to eat, and then we got to get to this sport, or we got to get to this event, and then we've got to get in the bed, and then we've got to get back to work. And so we're almost, no matter, how well-adjusted the family is, tasked with supporting families with that social emotional piece when it comes to technology. Yeah. It's just because, in a 2-parent working society, and with the demands of school and the demands of work, we sometimes just find that even with our own children, we're doing all that we can. But so true. I've asked my own child school counselor to help me with some of his emotional, emotional skills. Just because I gave it everything I got, but I ran out of time.
It's true. And it has to be a partnership. Yeah. Just again, kind of revisiting the amount of time that our kids are entrusted with you guys versus with us. I feel like there should be more of a partnership, and just like probably shared information. And it probably is just parents even knowing to reach out to you and seeing you all as the resource that you truly are. So kind of to touch on that, what are you seeing? Obviously, no names or anything, but what are you seeing as the most biggest issues or I don't want to say issues. I don't ever want to imply that like kids have issues. I have issues. But like, what are you seeing when it relates to like the mental health of this particular generation?
So I would kind of, to their point and Shannon's point specifically, when it comes to technology and social media, it's a different social, like it's different from how we grew up. Because we grew up different. Outside. You didn't come, don't come back until the streetlights flicker. Yep. You had, not that neighborhoods are any more or less safe, but like you were just outside. Like your parents weren't trying to figure out where you were. You didn't have to share a location. And so I think, at least for me, I feel like the education system, just like, law and government, I think we're struggling to keep up with how quickly, what the social component of our students' lives look like. And I think for parents, and I'm, this is going to be shared all over. I'm 36, and there's still stuff with technology that my nieces and nephews like, hey, I'm like, what is that? Like, I don't know what it is. And I can't, he's laughing at me. And they're like, can you help me do this? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, oh, it's an app. I'm like, an app for what? For what? And so imagine, our grandparents that are raising kids, or parents that are in their 50s, they don't know what they don't know. And so our students are brilliant. And I think sometimes their brilliance is their demise because they know how to go
Well said.
they know how to do all the backdoor stuff. And so if I don't know that you could even do this thing, I don't know what to look for to then have the conversation of like, hey, you probably shouldn't be, in a chat with 50-year-olds as a 14-year-old. Like, this is not safe. But I don't know it's happening, so I can't, because it's silent. It's not like us, you snuck out. You either, you knew the step that creaked, so you missed it. Or we do all the things, but like digital world is quiet. So if you don't know what is there, you don't know what's there. And so then you have students, when I was in Bedford County, our kids thought it was crazy. Like, wait, sharing a nude is against the law? And I was like, yes, that's an actual law that you were breaking. Oh, I didn't know that. Well,
oh, wow.
Yes, guys, like, go in person. Like, stop sharing things. And I think it's just a lack of the education is lagging behind the amount of access that students are having. Well, and then the parents, I mean, we're older, so some of the stuff we don't even know that you can do. And so, and then they get hurt. Like, that's how you get the students are like, oh, this situation happened. Right. And so it's almost like we can't, we feel like our reach isn't far enough to all the places that they're getting to.
Like, you don't know until they're hurt. Because that's when it comes to the surface and they want to talk about it, or you need to intervene. And that's so unfortunate. And I think about what you even said about like sharing nudes. I feel like that's happening younger and younger and younger. And you would never think to have some of these preemptive conversations with such a young person. But it's so important to talk about at home for sure. But also I think it sounds like you guys are having these conversations already at school. And so maybe that's important for parents to know if they don't already, the partnership that's happening here. Like, they can and will be having these conversations at school. And so it's just important to talk to your kids about the things that are happening, really, and probably younger than you think. Younger than you think you need to start.
I think a lot of what I feel like that I've seen a certain significant increase in over the last several years is students dealing with anxiety. And I think that the, like kind of what you were saying, like the social construct that they are living in, that's different from what we had is impacts that. And, don't necessarily, obviously, like you said, it's a tool, it's a blessing and a curse. Don't want to make it the enemy, but technology certainly has a role in that. And how students connect and relate. And, again, it's already such a interesting developmental time, and like we were talking about, gaining that independence and that personal identity, and what do my peers think about me, and what they think about me starts to outweigh what my family thinks, and that that importance. So I think it's just really challenging for them to figure out sometimes with all the opinions and all the voices, because there is that added layer of the access to more. And it's beyond just their, local social group. And so then that can be very intimidating and overwhelming. And so I think to kind of put it just that little bit or whatever, I would say that I think that's a lot of what we're seeing, and students having to navigate the world with some additional things impacting that.
I mean, our minds, in my opinion, our minds are not meant to take in the world. Our minds are created almost like at a community level. Like, here's what's happening in my family. Here's what's happening with my neighbors. Here's what's happening in my community. And yet, when horrible things happen all around the world, we know about it almost instantly. And that's a lot for me to handle as an adult. I can't imagine every time there is another tragedy that I learn about online, I know that I need to be really intentional about talking to my kids about that, because it's a lot to hold space for as an adult. And I just can't, I don't want that for them, but it's there and it's accessible, and I'd rather them hear about it from me,
I think what I tend to experience with students and how it impacts them during the instructional day is how distracting it is, even with an off and away policy. If you think about it, when you're having a face-to-face conversation, if you say something to someone, you witness and see their reaction right away. However, with the internet, with your computer, with your phone, there's a delayed response. So it gives you a bit of courage, essentially. You're not face-to-face. So you may say something that's a little more reactive or a little more impulsive. Whereas when you see that person directly beside you, you may use a little more tact or a little more reservation.
Yes.
And so a lot of our children are on these massive chat groups. If I could give any advice to a parent, it would be search your kid's phone, search your kid's phone, search your kid's phone.
Yeah.
Because when we give them independence, it's a difficult thing for them to manage. Even if they're a great kid, it can be a hard thing to manage.
Yeah.
Sports teams have chat groups because it's convenient and there's a communication element.
Wow, that's true.
And, you know, a group of friends might leave someone else. Is the only kid not in the chat group. Or if there's a kid in the chat group that they don't like, they make a new chat group. And it creates this whole conflict where everybody's at home at night, not getting along, and they bring that into the next school day. So even if the off and away policy is in effect and the students are doing what they're supposed to do at school, the conversations are about, did you see what so-and-so said in the chat last night? And then that creates a huge and massive distraction in our school environment. And then managing that social situation becomes their priority rather than the content that they're supposed to be taking in that moment. And it creates educational gaps.
Wow. I had not even considered that. And when you guys talk about the silent thing that's happening, like, that's just like the elephant in the room that you don't even know is in the room as the person outside of the situation. You just see the impacts and the effects on these kids. And you're like, okay, something's going on. I don't know what's going on. And I'm sure every parent, I know I have had that moment where you're like, something is going on and I don't know what, but clearly you are dealing with something. Yes.
And it ends up being a domino effect because when you're preoccupied with the conversation going on in the chat group, you end up staying up a little later than you should, and then you're tired, and then you're rushing to school, and then you forget your breakfast, and then you're hungry and tired and preoccupied with the peer interaction that took place last night, and now you have to deal with that person face to face when you get to civics class or once you get to PE, and then everyone's talking about it, and then your best friend means well, and they go, well, I heard that, and then it kind of reignites the conversation for you, and children are living like this day after day after day.
That's exhausting.
And so I think sometimes, especially for us, and I can speak from experience, you kind of perceive your child as a little more grown up when they hit middle school. And so you kind of back off and you say it's time to be more independent and it's time to, you know, be a little more responsible. But I would love to encourage parents to lean in and not step back because they're dealing with a lot and they need your support to deal with it. We can make them more responsible, but lean in at the same time. It's challenging, but we can do it.
It is. And for those parents who are watching, like, there's so much grace. Like, we're trying to figure this out, right? And I know I could and should lean in more. And what's that?
I said, I'm going to write a book one day, the parenting manual.
You should. Oh my gosh. I would read a book that a school counselor wrote.
It's going to be called.
It's so difficult. And you guys are giving such good insight for those who are watching. And I want, because I feel like we could just kind of linger here for a really long time. There's so much you guys see. But I do want to hear like the collaboration and the partnerships that you guys have. So you mentioned that there is like a security officer in school. And so what does that partnership, that extension of law enforcement look like in the schools? And how is that a partner for you?
So our resource officers, we love having them in the schools. And I've seen them establish great relationships with our students, Lord, to help them be more comfortable and understand what our officers in general, like in the city, are for, how they can support the community and what they're here for. And then in building those relationships with students in school, and it's all of our students, and then sometimes those who need a little bit more support of understanding about what's going on with their choices and decisions, and again, those paths that they can take. And so because it's somebody then that they see every day and they're able to build that relationship with and have rapport, then that gives more opportunity for listening and for understanding. And then we've even had some situations where you're trying to support a family in different various needs. It might be sometimes even like a mental health situation with a child. There have been even safety situations where having that resource officer wound up being like critical to the safety of the student. And so we welcome them and are thankful for them and their support roles in our buildings.
Yeah. So how many resource officers? Is it one per school?
So secondary for Lynchburg City, I believe is one per school.
Okay.
And at the elementary level, they're called
Security officers.
SSOs.
School
Okay.
security officers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that what's the difference? The firearm is different?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah.
I bet that's a really good support to just kind of know that presence is just even in the building. I know for me, I think of that, the SSO at elementary school, my kids were over at Bedford Hills and then my son was at RS Payne, and they both knew by name their resource officer and loved their resource officer. And I'm sure in middle school and high school, that's going to change a little bit, but just knowing that, along with the partnership of a school counselor, like this is kind of like a team approach to just ensuring that there is care in the local school system. So Century is obviously a community hospital, and I think about when you guys unfortunately do have situations where you're having to either refer or lean on an emergency situation. What does that referral process look like with your local health system?
So in a situation where we may be speaking to a student because either a note was written or a hunch was presented to us by a teacher, there are a lot of different ways in which a student might be referred to us, right? And so let's say we determine that this student needs to be evaluated for suicidal ideation or a plan in place to commit suicide. When we contact that parent, they're given options as to where they can go to have that evaluation done. One of them is the hospital. I do have to be transparent. I'm aware of how busy an emergency department can be.
Yes.
And so I will often use other community partners as an option.
Yeah.
If the student regularly sees a therapist, that is an option.
Yeah.
Or our Horizon Behavioral Health in the community is an option as well. They have a walk-in person available from 8 to 5 all the time. And once we determine or mandate that conversation, an attendance note is required in order for that child to return to school.
Okay.
But a lot of times where the partnership truly takes place is if that licensed person says, let's admit the child. Let's admit the child to the hospital for a stay, where they have intensive family sessions.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a psychiatrist that makes a recommendation for medication. There's a small group that takes place, and they stay overnight at the hospital. When that happens, I certainly think there's a goal of communication between us and the hospital.
Yeah.
But during the school year, the reality is there's sometimes not even a bed available for a child.
It's true.
I have a child that is staying at Roanoke this week because Christ 6 is full.
Yeah.
And so that does create a natural disconnect. How busy we've all become as individuals essentially means that our holistic approach is our goal, but not always something that is fully implemented.
Yeah.
So typically what happens is when they return to school and we're having a conversation with the parent, we request the discharge documents.
Gotcha.
That gives us just a scope of the notes taken by the doctor, how those conversations went, and what they recommend for the child moving forward.
Yeah.
And then that way we can mark the attendance as excused as well, not unexcused.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, academics are not prioritized at that time, so they miss a week of school typically. It can be anywhere from 3 to 7 days is usually the length of stay. And then that way we can allow the child to have that many days to make up their work.
Yeah.
So it's that domino effect I talked about with cell phones. You come in sleepy and hungry and behind because you're distracted. Their mental health needs when they reach that level impact them in the same way. Because at that time, academics are secondary. So you do end up a week behind.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's where that anxiety that Ms. Brown mentioned spirals out of control, because not only did I have a need, and essentially strangers are the ones providing that care for me, but then I come back to school and I've missed a week of school too. And then everybody asks me what happened and where I went.
Yeah. And then our SROs are also parts of our threat assessment teams as well. So it's a school administrator school counselor, school resource officer. And that idea, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, was to kind of have that village holistic team at the table. So it's all these different components to kind of cover the whole child. So everybody comes to the table when those assessments come up to kind of determine what do we do.
So for any reason a child could be at risk of harm to others. That's when that conversation takes place. They're not always privy to that information when they're simply at risk of harm to themselves. But that way we can best combat what the feelings are that child is experiencing and who could be in danger. Even if they're in danger themselves, we can best discern whether that team approach because our environment is in danger or whether it just needs to be our school counseling department doing an in-house personal conversation with the child that's struggling.
It really is like a cross-community partnership because I know like Centra leans strongly and vice versa on the community partners in this area. Because, if there is someone who is providing a resource and doing it really well, like let's not duplicate the situation, let's partner. And so creating that handoff from place to place, and there's so many amazing community partners here in Lynchburg and Bedford and Southside and all the various places. And so are you seeing that number of students who are in these types of situations increase?
I feel like it's almost steady right now. I wouldn't say
there's not an escalation necessarily.
No,
okay. Not
right now. As we were talking a little bit before about some things to discuss today, it's kind of weird sometimes, like feeling at this point, 2025, like 5 years out from everything shutting down and COVID and how students sort of came out and reemerged from that and the needs that were present from that. Maybe in that time frame were a little bit higher with how people were feeling and what things were going on. But again, at this point, I feel like it's just been a little bit kind of the steady, in a way, almost sort of norm of the ebbs and flows of when students are having the situations that may require a deeper conversation or an evaluation, things like that.
Forgive me, I can't think of the name of the author at this time, but there's a huge push for this book called The Anxious Generation right now.
I have it, yes.
And I haven't had the time to read it page to page, but I've read some of it. And what he talks about, it feels so very present in my world of work. Like Ms. Brown is essentially saying, it does feel steady right now, but that's because there's been a surge for so long.
Yeah.
It's been present for a while now. And it's interesting how he can connect it to the modernization of technology. I don't know if there's really truly only that. I think it is certainly multifaceted, but essentially it feels steady because kids have been sad for a long time.
Yeah.
Oh, I think social media and I think technology amplified it. Because to your point, all of our embarrassing moments and all of our things took place in isolation to a degree. Now it's almost
permanent.
It's permanent, but the impact radiates so much. It's almost like everyone feels like they have their own individual little like reality show. Like if something were to happen to me and I post it, everybody, like it's not just, just my 6 friends know. Great. Nope. The school knows. Lynchburg City knows, like whoever my platform is connected to. So some kid in California, it's like, there's a kid in Lynchburg City School that, so it almost magnifies just the normal development of children. And I think that also is one of the reasons why the education with the students, but with the parents, it's like, you want your kid to be more independent, but I don't think middle schoolers developmentally cannot handle what social media is. And to your point, our brains aren't meant to take in all of the world's information simultaneously. So imagine you spilling a stain on your pants, but now thousands of people know that it happened versus just a couple. Or you posted a video because you really liked your cool TikTok dance, but now thousands of people are like, well, that was dumb. And so it just amplifies the problem. And I don't know if there's
what
do you do?
Our children are feeling. Like when you hear celebrities in interviews talk about the limelight and how it, it comes with the good and the bad. Children are experiencing that feeling because so much can spread so quickly.
Yeah.
It's a lot. These kids need a lot of support.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you guys for doing the work that you do. I mean, I think this conversation has been encouraging for me. Definitely enlightening, because there are some things that we don't realize our kids are walking through. And so I hope as people are watching this, it's just almost like an open awareness for the partnership that is available with your school counselor and the care. We call it a care team when there's like multiple people on you as a patient who can speak to your care.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys kind of have that similar approach. You have like this care team approach for these kids. And so that support is available and it's out there. So we're going to continue this conversation in a part 2 with some of our mental health counselors here at Centra to just kind of hear from a clinical side of things, because this is the reality of what kids are dealing with right now. And, maybe it varies from city to city, from state to state, but I think at the heart of it, it's probably it's very similar. Especially since they're connected from city to city and state to state now.
Yeah.
So thank you all for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for joining us, and stay tuned for part 2.